the uMhlathuze Emergency Services is still battling to extinguish a raging fire in Richards Bay's woodchip mill. Newzroom Afrika's Ntando Mnyandu is part of our team watching developments, and he joins us now live. And it appears, Ntando, there's intermittent showers where you're at, I imagine, very welcomed by authorities there who are still trying to bring this blaze under control.
Yes, most certainly. Officials from the city of uMhlathuze, together with other privately owned firefighting institutions, have had their work cut out ever since yesterday and early hours of this morning, trying to contain the fire that broke yesterday here at NCT. NCT is a company that deals with wood chipping. But with me here, I have Knoesen, who is the general manager here at NCT. Denny, thank you for your time. And since the fire broke, what effort have you guys tried to try and contain the fire, and what is the status as things stand?
Thanks. So the fire broke out around midday yesterday, and we had fairly light winds, and we had a response from all the major firefighters in the area, South 32, uMhlathuze themselves, the port, and our own firefighters. So we had 5 or 6 different teams in there, and we were working hard on suppressing the blaze. Unfortunately, in the late afternoon, the wind swung 180 degrees from northeast to southwest, and it came through at 40 knots an hour, and we lost control of the blaze, and it jumped 2 or 3 chip piles. So we withdrew, and we focused our efforts on saving the chip piles on this side here. And we were working on that most of the night, but the wind really did not help us. It was like the perfect storm, unfortunately. We lost our last chip pile at about just after midnight, and it became unsafe, and I pulled a lot of the crews back and to see how we could then protect the rest of the community as well as the undamaged areas. And that's where we are right now. So we have about 40 firefighters in there at the moment, and we're putting down suppressing water onto the chip piles that you can see in the background right now that are still undamaged. Those belong to our neighbor TWK. And we've also called in aerial program from tomorrow morning. The visibility is not good enough today, and fixed wing planes will come in and start dropping both on the TWK pile for protection and also on the burning piles to suppress the embers. We're expecting the risks to increase again tomorrow during the day and the afternoon as the winds swing again and pick up. Unfortunately, this time of year it's not a very good time to have a fire. We're very grateful that no one's been injured and there's been no fatalities. There's a lot of damage to the stockpiles, and NCT's entire stock here has been devastated by the fire, and we've lost a number of buildings and a number of vehicles and plant. So far, our neighbor TWK, the second chip plant operation here, is okay, and we are all working really, really hard to make sure that we can keep it that way. uMhlathuze themselves have been very good and on point in terms of their fire department. There were a few secondary fires in the velds in the nearby area, and they handled those very well. We've also called in our fire teams from surrounding farms, Melmoth, Inyati, Pietermaritzburg, and we have additional people in the facility at the moment.
What would you say could be an estimate of the loss that has been incurred by NCT as a result of this fire, which is still raging blazes?
It's going to run into billions of rands. You know, we're a 3.5 billion rand company, and a lot of the revenue we derive from our export business out of Richards Bay as well as Durban, and we're not going to be able to export out of Richards Bay certainly for the next 6 to 8 months. That's how bad the damage is. So the damage is going to run into the billions in terms of the lost revenue and the stock, as well as the buildings and equipment that we've lost in here.
There has been some suspicions and speculations that the fire might have been as a result of a conveyor belt. Can you confirm to us what caused the fire, if you have that information?
So, we can only speculate at this stage. What I do know, yesterday was 40 degrees thereabouts in Richards Bay with a stifling wind and very, very high humidity. That immediately picks up the risk profile of a plant like ourselves. And if it was a conveyor belt, and it's likely to have been either a conveyor belt or the bearings running near a conveyor belt that may have overheated in the conditions What we do know is that the conveyor belt did certainly catch fire. Whether it was the chicken or egg, we're not entirely sure, but the conveyor belt was right above the chip pile. And certainly whatever happened, the top of the chip pile started, and with the wind and the conditions yesterday, it's just impossible to defend. We were really against it with the wind that swung in the evening, and then again, just before midnight, the wind swung another 30 degrees and just increased the risk for us even more. We were protecting our last chip pile until that point, and then we lost it. And then we pulled everyone out and focused on suppression rather than trying to salvage anything else.
Currently, do you have any fears for your guys who are trying to contain the fire?
So we're working very sensibly and very responsibly. We're working in pairs and we're working very professionally. So there's no immediate risk to the firefighters. The chip piles are blazing, but there is no burning buildings, and most of the logs have burnt out already. It's just the chip piles that are burning. So the risk is wind and the embers flying around from the wind. And we're working on suppressing that as much as possible, and the aerial program tomorrow will help that. So the risk, the risks today compared to last night have been greatly reduced because the visibility is a lot better. We're not working at night, and there's not a lot of smoke cover that we couldn't see, like what we couldn't see last night.
But would you say that the efforts to douse out the fire would run into midnight and possibly early hours of tomorrow morning?
Yes, it's definitely going to take us several days to get this out. When a wood chip pile like that burns, you just don't have enough water to suppress it. It burns like for half a meter down, and it burns at its own rate, and it doesn't matter how much water you push there, it'll find another way to ignite. So what we're looking at here is probably several weeks of fighting a smoldering chip pile once we've got it under a little bit more control.
Thank you very much, Danny.
Thank you very much.
Well, that is Danny Knoesen, who's the general manager at NCT, a company that deals with wood chip. As he correctly puts it, that it would take them up to a couple of days to try and, extinguish this raging fire. As he says, wood chips are highly flammable, and he says obviously that the loss of runs could run easily to a couple of billion rands, as they are a multi-billion rand exporting wood chip. So with that, it's back to you in studio.
Mhlathuze, thanks very much indeed for that, really painting the picture for us of the extent of the calamity there in Richards Bay. Certainly a developing story sharply on our radar. But for now, Ntando, thanks very much indeed.